You can achieve everything: a dream home, professional success, recognition, independence. But there is something that, if left unresolved, always comes back. Sometimes on Christmas Eve, sometimes in the form of a doorbell ringing without warning. This is not just the story of a wealthy woman who is reunited with her family after 10 years of silence. It's the story of an old wound, disguised as an unexpected visitor. Because what would you do if, on the most intimate night of the year, ghosts from the past knocked on your door? With suitcases in hand and a request that seems too innocent to be real? She didn't expect anyone. And that's exactly why everything changed. In this video, you'll discover how one woman built her freedom stone by stone and had to defend it like a castle about to be invaded. You will see hidden truths, denied inheritances, choked pardons, and a decision that redefined what family is. Prepare to question what you mean by blood tie, and to realize that sometimes loving yourself requires saying no, even to the one you most wanted to hear a yes to. You're not just about to watch a story. You are about to feel the weight, the beauty, and the redemption of those who have finally learned to choose their own peace. Now take a deep breath, and come with me to find out what really happened that Christmas Eve. The city of Charleston was covered in an almost cinematic glow. The lights reflected off the old windows of Victorian homes, while snowflakes danced softly in the air, as if each carried a memory stored in time. In Ava Thompson's white stone mansion, the holiday decor was understated but impeccable, like everything else in her life. Fresh pine trees in Italian pots, aromatic candles lit in strategic corners, and a fireplace that crackled in a cozy way created the feeling of a perfect Christmas. For the first time in a long time, Ava felt a genuine peace, a serenity built with effort, after years of trying to silence voices that insisted on echoing the past. She poured herself a glass of red wine and walked to the living room window, watching the neighbors celebrate with music and joy. Benjamin, the neighbor across the street, waved briefly before walking in with bags of gifts. Ava smiled slightly, the kind of smile that doesn't give in. For her, Christmas was an opportunity to reaffirm her choice. The silence of solitude was better than the noise of pain. It was then that, at 7 p.m. sharp, the bell rang, cutting through the air like a blade. She froze. I didn't expect anyone. Not on that day, not at that time. She walked to the door cautiously, her footsteps almost floating on the Turkish wool carpet. When he turned the handle and opened it, his eyes took a long time to understand what they saw. In front of her, with suitcases, heavy coats, and faltering looks, was her entire family. Evelyn, his mother, cried without disguising it. Richard, the father, held a suitcase with a trembling hand. Laura, her younger sister, smiled with guilt in her eyes. Nathan, the middle brother, carried Emily on his lap, and Jacob looked at everything in awe. For 10 years, Ava lived as if these people did not exist. Every childhood memory had been kept in an emotional vault, locked with a padlock of self-preservation. She didn't know what to say. The words were stuck as if time had stolen the common language between them. Evelyn was the first to speak, her voice breaking. "Daughter, we had nowhere to go." The phrase sounded like an absurd contradiction. They had a house. They had everything. Or they had as far as Ava knew. But at that moment, all the certainties she had built began to shake. The shock quickly turned to distrust. Ava knew well the looks of her mother, the silences of her father, the manipulative smile of her sister. Even without saying anything, each of them already delivered more than they would like. She could feel, like an ancient instinct, that something was wrong, profoundly wrong. The peace she had won with so much effort was being invaded, as if the ghosts had gained flesh and blood. As she looked at the children, Ava felt a twinge of tenderness, but also of alertness. It was Christmas. There was no place for war, but there was no room for surrender either. Doubt ran through his chest like an unanswered question. Why now? Why, after a decade of absolute silence? Were they there, at your doorstep, as if time had not passed? As if the wounds had not existed? Unable to think clearly, Ava simply said, "Come in. It's cold." The words came out automatic, thoughtless, as a reflection of an education she thought she had abandoned. The family came in. The suitcases scratched the marble floor. The warmth of the house contrasted with the emotional ice that now spread in the air. And so, as in a script she would never have written, her home, her refuge, became the stage for a reunion full of mysteries, resentments, and questions that time refused to erase. But Ava still didn't know that this was only the first act. That the motive behind that unexpected visit was much bigger, more painful, and more dangerous than anything she could have imagined. Because sometimes, the past doesn't knock on the door apologizing. He knocks to take back what he thinks still belongs to him. And it was at that exact moment that Ava realized her Christmas was just beginning. Ava Thompson was born in Charleston, but grew up as if she were always one step on the fringes of that city. While neighboring families shared smiles in local cafes and Christmas traditions filled with music and warmth, the Thompson home was made up of thick silences, judgmental looks, and hurting words. From an early age, Ava learned to observe in silence, to walk without making noise, to hide emotions as if hiding scars. Evelyn, his mother, was a strict woman who confused control with care. Richard, the father, was absent even when present. He preferred the newspaper to dialogue, prestige to fatherhood. And Ava, the eldest daughter, grew up believing that love was something that was earned with obedience, and not something that was received for existing. At school, she was seen as the perfect student. Impeccable grades, exemplary behavior, no complaints. But no one imagined that this performance was his silent way of asking for help. At the age of 15, Ava already knew she needed to escape. She saved money she got from small jobs, read business books in secret at night, dreamed of freedom like someone who dreams of oxygen. At that time, she made a pact with herself in front of the cracked mirror in the bathroom of the house. "One day, I'm going to get out of here, and I'm never going back." This phrase became his mantra, his shield, and later his emotional prison. Ava gained her independence at a very early age. At the age of 18, she was accepted into a prestigious university with a full scholarship. She worked as a waitress, sold used books, did online translations. Every penny was a note in the symphony of his freedom. He graduated with honors and quickly immersed himself in the business world. She realized that she had a talent for negotiation, a vision for opportunities, and, most importantly, an internal fire that moved her. Within a few years, he founded a technology company focused on home automation solutions, a sector that exploded in the American market. The fortune came quickly, but without shortcuts. Each achievement was a brick in her new identity, the Ava who won alone. Over time, the name Ava Thompson began to appear in magazines, innovation columns, and entrepreneurship events. But the name was never accompanied by the surname family. She avoided personal questions, changed the subject when the past came up. He never denied his parents, but he also never brought them to his new world. The pain was still raw, even covered with the varnish of realization. For her, success wasn't just a goal, it was a cry for independence, a mute response to neglected childhood. And even with everything she built, the elegant mansion, the imported cars, the invitations to international conferences, there was one thing Ava could never buy: complete peace. From time to time, in the silence of the night, memories emerged in flashes. The smell of Grandma's pumpkin pie, the song her sister sang locked in her room, the laughter that once echoed before turning into accusations. But she always pushed those memories back to the back of her mind, like someone who closes a Pandora's box and throws away the key. Still, in her most honest moments, usually during sessions with Dr. Melissa Grant, her therapist, Ava confessed that, behind the image of a strong and unshakable woman, there was a girl who just wanted to be seen, heard, loved. And for this reason, each Christmas was celebrated with aesthetic rigidity and emotional isolation. She decorated the house like a work of art, but she didn't hang a single family keepsake. The trees were spotless, but no gifts marked with names. The supper was plentiful, but not shared. Because, for Ava, it was better to live in silence than to risk repeating the pain of the past. That old pact, made at the age of 15, still guided each choice. Never go back. Never depend on anyone again. Never again open your heart to those who could hurt you. It was a protection, but also a prison. And deep down, something inside her began to question. How far is it worth protecting oneself from pain, if it also means protecting oneself from love? And it was in this silent dilemma that the reunion began to erode Ava's certainties, piece by piece. Ava remembered that day as someone who revisits a nightmare that insists on coming back. It was Christmas Eve, exactly 10 years ago. The Thompson family home was decorated with exaggeration. Too many lights, too many decorations, too many expectations. But nothing there was authentic. It was as if the decoration hid cracks that no one wanted to see, not even the family members themselves. Evelyn, as always, controlled everything with an iron fist. The time of supper, the arrangement of cutlery, even what each one should wear. Richard, sitting in his leather armchair, just watched, oblivious. And Laura? Well, Laura was in her spiritual phase, spreading mantras of positivity while hiding unresolved resentments. That night, everything seemed to follow the usual script of appearances. Until Ava, while trying to help her niece Emily with dinner, overheard a conversation by accident. Evelyn was in the kitchen, talking on the phone. The words still echoed in Ava's memory, like razors cutting through the inside. Ava has always been different. Cold, calculating, as if she were better than us. But her money will run out one day, and then she will remember that she only has her family. Ava's blood ran cold. That was not just a criticism. It was a sentence, a distorted view of who she was, coming from the very one who should have loved her unconditionally. She didn't confront it right away. He swallowed hard, tried to go on with the night as if nothing had happened. But all it took was a tongue-in-cheek comment from Richard about her rich life, and a passive-aggressive taunt from Laura about how success went to her head for it to explode. Ava, for the first time, raised her voice. He shouted truths he had kept for years. She talked about emotional abandonment, about her mother's toxic perfectionism, about her father's absence, about her sister's silent envy. It was like lighting a match in a dry field. Evelyn screamed back, wounded with pride. Richard asked for silence, as always. And Laura, he cried, but did not apologize. Ava ran out of the room. He went up to his old room, where there were still some childhood books and yellowed photos. He looked at the mirror, the same one where, years before, he had made his pact never to return. And there, in front of her own reflected image, she felt the cycle needed to end. It was no longer possible to insist on ties that suffocated in a house that was no longer home. He decided that this would be his last supper with them. The next morning, he packed his bags in silence, took a flight back to New York, and never answered a call again. The following years were of internal reconstruction. Ava threw herself into work with more intensity, trying to fill every empty space with goals, contracts, profits. Whenever she missed her, and yes, she did, she remembered her mother's voice on the phone. That cruel phrase served as an antidote to any desire for reconciliation. Even the sisters' few attempts at rapprochement were ignored. Ava believed that detachment was her only form of emotional survival. That solitude was preferable to living with people who only saw it as an opportunity. But time, as much as it does not cure everything, changes the contours of pain. And in her sessions with the therapist, she began to admit that this breakup had not just been an escape, but also a fracture that was still bleeding. It was like losing a part of yourself. Because, as toxic as it had been, that was its origin. And no one can erase the roots without compromising their own trunk. And it was with this still silent weight that Ava opened the door of her house, 10 years later, and saw those same faces before her. It wasn't just a visit. It was a return to the exact point where everything had fallen apart. And now, without realizing it, she was once again at the center of the emotional storm she swore never to face again. But there was a crucial difference this time. Now, Ava was another woman, and she was no longer willing to swallow anything quietly. The mansion in Charleston's historic district was not chosen by chance. Ava was looking for a place that not only represented status, but also symbolized a reset. When he saw that building with a classic facade, high windows and imposing columns, he felt something almost inexplicable. It was as if that space understood his silence. Buying it was an act of courage, but also of faith. Faith in herself. Faith that, there, she could rebuild her identity, now as the woman who won alone. Each renovated wall, each hand-picked piece of furniture, carried a fragment of his story of overcoming. The piano in the living room was not just an instrument. It was a reminder of the stolen childhood that she could now rescue on her own. Behind the scenes of his fortune, there was much more than talent. There were sleepless nights, painful rejections, meetings in which she had to prove 3 times her ability for being a woman, young and independent. His company, which specializes in technological solutions for smart homes, started in a rented apartment. But it soon grew, gaining space in the American market with a simple proposal: to give back control to people within their own homes. Ironically, Ava empowered thousands of customers, while struggling to feel free within herself. Still, the prizes came. The invitations to speak at conferences, the dinners with investors, the compliments on magazine covers. All of this validated his trajectory, at least on paper. But even the most powerful woman needs footholds outside of the business world. And it was in Benjamin Hayes that Ava found a rare friendship. A neighbor on the street, a retired history teacher, he was the opposite of Ava's rush. Calm, observant, owner of a wisdom that came not from books, but from losses. They had met by chance, when his dog escaped and ran into Ava's garden. Since then, conversations at the gate have become rituals. She spoke little, he didn't force it. But in the silences, Ava felt understood. He never asked about her family. And that, in itself, was already a relief. That year, Ava had planned a different Christmas. I wanted something simple but meaningful. He had sent for special wines from California, picked out soft Christmas songs to play on the piano, and bought a small living tree to replant later. There would be no party. There would be no guests. Just her, perhaps a quick visit from Benjamin with a handwritten card, as he did every year. For Ava, that loneliness was not sadness. It was a choice. It was maturity. It was the first time she felt that Christmas would be a celebration of the peace she had built with effort. The decoration of the mansion reflected this internal balance. Nothing was fancy. There were lights, but soft ones. There were garlands, but with natural touches, without artificial glitter. Everything seemed to breathe calmly. The aroma of cinnamon and vanilla invaded the air, coming from the candles lit on the shelves. The dress she had chosen for the evening was dark burgundy, elegant and comfortable. Ava wanted to live that Christmas with the lightness of someone who had finally freed herself from the shackles of the past. As I walked around the house that afternoon, with a glass of wine and instrumental music in the background, I felt that I had finally won. Defeated the internal voices. Overcome the eyes that doubted. The fear of not being enough was overcome. It was as if everything in that room said, "You've arrived." And for a moment, Ava believed that it was possible to live like this forever. Little did she know that, at that very moment, a minivan was parked outside, with suitcases, voices, and looks that carried a world she had buried a decade ago. The past, the one she thought she had left locked up in Charleston, was about to enter uninvited. And when the doorbell rang, everything she had planned fell apart in seconds. It was exactly 7 p.m. when the metallic sound of the doorbell broke the harmony of the house like lightning in a clear sky. Ava, facing the fireplace, held a book she had read 3 times, but which she reread whenever she wanted to slow down her thought. The wine is still half done. The Christmas playlist at low volume. The dark burgundy dress aligned to the body like a second skin, discreet, sober, sophisticated. She didn't expect anyone. The only scheduled visitor, Benjamin, always called early. The ringing of the doorbell sounded wrong, untimely, and without knowing why, Ava felt a shiver run down her spine. With firm steps but a racing heart, she crossed the main hallway, where the Christmas lights hung from the walls as if they were memories about to be released. When he opened the door, froze. Like in a badly written movie, there they were. Everyone. Evelyn with swollen eyes. Richard with a posture bent by time or guilt. Laura holding hands with her children. Nathan with an ambiguous countenance, between embarrassed and hopeful. The suitcases formed a small army at the foot of the balcony stairs, as if announcing that this was not just a visit, it was an occupation. For a moment, Ava couldn't say anything. Evelyn, the mother, stepped forward, holding a crumpled handkerchief and shaking slightly. Her voice, when she left, was thin, almost childish. "Daughter, we had nowhere to go." The phrase remained in the air, hovering between them like an accusation or a plea. And for the first time in years, Ava saw her mother stripped of the haughtiness that had always surrounded her. There was a real vulnerability there. Or was it staging? Ava didn't know how to discern. After all, with Evelyn, everything has always had a double background. Ava's mind went round in circles. Why were they there? What happened? And why now, just at Christmas? They were really homeless. Or was that just another calculated move, like so many others in the past? Old Ava would have said no without batting an eyelid. He would have closed the door with the firmness of someone who has learned to protect himself. But this Ava, built on therapy, time and scars, hesitated. Because, after all, it was his family. And those kids, Emily and Jacob, were not to blame for anything. They were cold. And they were looking at her as if looking at a heroine. As if she were the salvation of that night. Inside, Ava screamed. I wanted to understand, demand explanations, keep control. But on the outside, he just sat silent for long seconds, a silence so dense that it seemed like one more character in that scene. Eyes crossed. Evelyn put down hers. Laura bit her lips. Richard let out a sigh so deep it seemed to hurt. And it was then that Ava, with a lump in her throat, spoke only 2 words. Come in. Hurry. The next scene was surreal. The suitcases invaded the impeccably decorated hall. Wet coats were hastily hung on the chairs. The children marveled at the Christmas tree as if they were in a movie. Emily pointed out each ornament as if discovering a new world. Jacob ran to the fireplace, delighted with the crackling wood. And for a moment, the mansion was filled with life, but also with tension. Ava leaned against the wall of the hallway, taking a deep breath. She still didn't understand what was happening. Why, after 10 years of silence, did the whole family knock on his door? Were they running away from something? Did they want reconciliation? Or was there something else? Something that had not yet been said? And as she tried to organize her thoughts, a certainty began to form. Nothing about this visit was by chance. The hours following the family's arrival were a parade of emotional subtleties. On the surface, everything seemed restrained, polite, almost civilized. But behind each word exchanged, the weight of unspoken years hovered. The mansion, once quiet and welcoming, had become an uncomfortable stage, where each room breathed hard. The heat of the fireplace seemed to have lost its effect. The Christmas lights flickered as if they felt the tension in the air. And Ava, though she was the hostess, felt like a stranger in her own house. Nathan was the first to try to break the ice. He offered to help with the bags, commented on how beautiful the house was, made a light joke about the digital lock technology. Ava reciprocated with a short smile, the kind that doesn't leave room for deepening. But she noticed, Nathan was more mature. The impulsive way of before seemed to have given way to a shy serenity. He watched everything with respect, avoiding the mistake of trying to appear too intimate. It was almost as if he were saying, "I know I made a mistake, but I'm here." Lara, on the other hand, soon assumed a defensive posture disguised as sweetness. In an almost theatrical tone, he began to talk about the difficulties they faced in recent times. How easy life was not, but his words were accompanied by justifications that bothered him. He tried to explain the past as if a "you were also us" was enough to equalize 10 years of absence. Ava listened in silence, without rebutting, but inside each sentence was a thorn. That was not repentance. It was a rehearsal. It was an attempt to clean the bar without facing the dirt. The children, innocent as only children can be, brought the few moments of relief that night. Emily danced around the house as if she were in a castle. Jacob marveled at every detail: the voice-controlled sound system, the handmade candy cabinet, the grand piano. Their eyes shone with pure enchantment. And Ava, even unintentionally, was moved. Maybe it was that kind of enchantment that she herself never felt in her childhood. Perhaps it was there, in those open eyes, that the only clean truth of that night lived. Richard, the father, remained in almost absolute silence. She sat in an armchair in the living room as if she were just another decorative object. He watched everything with tired eyes, avoiding any eye contact with Ava. He said nothing. He did not praise the house. He did not thank for the welcome. And that hurt more than any words. Because his silence was not shy. It was an old silence, of whom he always preferred not to get involved. Ava looked at him and felt that she was still that girl who tried a "Daddy, look at me," and received a vague nod. Nothing had changed. During the impromptu dinner, a mix of what Ava had already prepared for herself and some snacks brought by the family, the conversations were superficial. Comments about the weather, about how Charleston felt colder that year, about how the city had changed. Evelyn avoided eye contact. Lara laughed too loudly. Nathan ate slowly. The children interrupted all the time, perhaps unconsciously trying to fill the silences with life. And Ava watched everything as if watching a movie of which she already knows the ending. The dining table, a symbol of reunion and affection, now looked like a trench. After supper, Ava retired for a few minutes. He went up to the bedroom, closed the door, rested his forehead on the cold wood and took a deep breath. The house was full, but she felt alone. A whirlwind of sensations took over my chest: anger, confusion, guilt, exhaustion. Why now? What are they hiding? That question echoed like a dull drum inside her. Because Ava knew, her family didn't give a stitch without a knot. And that "we had nowhere to go" did not explain the visit. It was just the surface of something much deeper. And she was about to discover that behind the restrained smiles and carefully chosen words, there was a real and hidden reason for this sudden return. The next morning, Ava woke up before everyone else. He prepared coffee as he always did, strong, silent, aromatic. The soft morning light poured in through the white curtains, tinting the kitchen with golden hues. For a brief moment, everything seemed peaceful. But the faint sound of footsteps in the corridor was enough for the tension to return like an icy breeze. Evelyn was the first to descend. Without makeup, With his face still marked by fatigue and years, he sat at the table as if waiting for something. Ava poured her coffee quietly, and it was only then that Evelyn let out the first spark. "We need to talk, but I don't know where to start." Ava sat up in front of her, crossed her arms, and kept her gaze fixed. "It wouldn't make it easier." Evelyn hesitated, looked at her hands, took a deep breath, and said that her health was not good. A silent heart problem, which had been getting worse. Ava frowned, but said nothing. The mother's tone was not that of one who sought compassion. It was that of one who tried to justify the unjustifiable. Evelyn spoke in a low tone, mentioning exams, medications, fear of dying alone. But something in her speech seemed rehearsed. Ava, who knew this woman better than she would have liked, realized it was not illness that had brought her there. It was fear, but not the fear of death, the fear of ruin. Later, while arranging the coffee dishes, Nathan approached. In an informal manner, he said that his father, Richard, had made an unsuccessful investment and lost a large part of his savings. The house where they lived was mortgaged. There were debts. "That's why we came," he said. "We didn't know where to go." But Ava noticed that he avoided telling the whole truth. Because if it was just for shelter, they would have called before, they would have explained. They would not have shown up with suitcases on Christmas Eve, as if the house were her obligation. Nathan seemed sincere, but he still omitted something. Later, it was Laura who tried to stitch the narrative together. Sitting on the couch, with Emily asleep on her lap, she began to talk about how life had changed. She lost her job, her husband traveling non-stop, her children growing up without stability. He said he thought about starting from scratch, but he didn't know how, and that only Ava had the structure to help them. The word came out cautiously, but not out of politeness, but out of strategy. Ava felt it right away. This visit was a campaign. Each one had a role. Evelyn, the frail. Nathan, the mediator. Laura, the one who was the victim. Richard, the absent one. And the grandchildren, the perfect excuse. The perception fell like a weight in the stomach. Ava got up, went to the kitchen, and leaned against the sink. He looked at the snow-covered garden and felt anger begin to boil beneath his skin. They were not there for reconciliation. They were there for resources, for survival. And they saw in her not a daughter, a sister, a wounded woman trying to go on in peace, but a solution, a safe haven that they did not choose when she needed it. Now, they appeared as if they had the right to resume a tie that they themselves had cut. Throughout the afternoon, Ava began to watch every detail carefully. He noticed how Evelyn purposely left medical leaflets on the table, how Nathan insisted on telling stories about financial hardship in a casual tone, how Laura guided the children to enchant Ava with drawings, sweet words, promises of affection. And like Richard, he continued in silence, as if this was a way of washing his hands of everything. Gradually, the puzzle took shape. It was not just about emotional need, nor financial bad luck. There was something bigger, an attempt to re-enter Ava's life not out of love, but out of necessity. And more than that, with expectation, as if she had an obligation to give up what she built alone to rescue those who ignored her for a decade. But Ava didn't yet know that there was a fundamental piece missing from this story, a hidden detail that would change everything, and that was about to be revealed by someone she didn't expect. It was almost night when the doorbell rang for the second time that Christmas. This time, Ava didn't wince. He knew who he was. Benjamin Hayes had the habit of spending on the 24th with a simple gift, usually an old book, a bottle of wine, or a card with quotes that mixed philosophy and tenderness. It was his personal ritual, and in some ways, it was also the only time Ava allowed light affection to invade her Christmas. She opened the door with a tired but true smile. Benjamin, in his beige coat and red scarf, held a small gold box with a blue bow. When he saw the house full, he arched an eyebrow. "I hope I'm not getting in the way," he said in that tone of voice that always seemed to balance humor and sensitivity. Ava hesitated for a second before answering. "No, you are welcome." She invited him in, even though she knew it could open up room for questions. And it did. Benjamin walked around the room with a discreet but perceptive look. He greeted everyone politely. Evelyn smiled rehearsedly. Nathan tried to appear sympathetic. Laura ventured a comment about how she heard very good things about him. But Benjamin, experienced, captured the energy without needing many words. After a few minutes of cursory interaction, Ava led him to the side porch, where he used to drink coffee on sunny days. It was a quiet space, with a small outdoor fireplace and 2 wrought iron chairs. There, sitting face to face, the real dialogue began. Benjamin handed over the box. Inside, a small book with a worn cover, letters to a young poet. "I thought of you. This book is about looking inward, without getting lost there." Ava smiled, and then it collapsed, not in tears, but in words. He told the essentials, the arrival, the excuses, the strange weather, the intuition that something wasn't right. Benjamin listened to everything without interrupting. He just looked as if he were really listening, a look that said, "I'm here, unhurried." When Ava finished, he spoke with sweet firmness. "Ava, sometimes we get so used to defending ourselves that we don't notice when we start building walls even against those who just wanted to enter with flowers. But you also need to learn to recognize when they're trying to hack in with tools." She laughed, humorlessly. "And how do I know the difference?" He tilted his head and replied, "You already know. You just need to trust what you feel." It was at this point that Ava let her guard down. She talked about the silent guilt that gnawed at her, for being successful, for abandoning her family, for still caring, even after all. Benjamin, in his calm voice, said something that was hammering in her mind for the rest of the night. "You haven't abandoned. You saved yourself. Those who abandon are those who stop loving with truth. And it seems to me that you were the only one who tried, for a long time, before stopping." The words fell like balm, and also as a warning. Between them, there was a slight tension, a kind of affection that was not declared, but present in the gestures. An accidental touch of the hand, a look that is too long. Ava felt that Benjamin was more than a neighbor. It was an emotional anchor, a presence that did not ask for space, but occupied wisely. In that conversation, she saw herself through his eyes, not as the injured daughter, nor as the tough businesswoman, but as a woman in transition. Someone who could choose what to do with his own past, without repeating patterns. At the farewell, Benjamin looked at her with a faint smile. "If you need silence, know where to find me. But if you want to talk more, too." Ava nodded. "Thank you for seeing, even when I try to hide it." He replied only, "I see why you are not invisible to me." And he left, leaving the balcony warmer than the fireplace could do on its own. But the heat of that encounter was interrupted as soon as Ava returned to the room and realized that something had changed. The climate was denser. Someone moved where they shouldn't. And what would just be an uncomfortable night, it was about to turn into an inevitable confrontation. The dining table was spotless. Light crockery, crystal glasses, napkins folded with delicacy. Ava has always had a habit of taking care of the details. It was her way of controlling the chaos. Even in the face of mounting tension, she had decided to put together a worthy Christmas dinner, perhaps in the quiet hope that something beautiful might emerge from this emotional mess. The children were excited. Emily wore a reindeer antlered tiara. Jacob, a crooked tie that he had chosen himself to look important. But the adults, the adults were masked. Forced smiles, carefully chosen conversations, a choreography of hypocrisy. At first, everything went on like a well-rehearsed theater. Evelyn commented on the decoration of the house, trying to sound gentle. Richard let out a rare, "The food is great," without looking up from the plate. Lara talked too much. Nathan tried to include Ava in the conversations with small questions. How was your last project? Does the company still work with residential intelligence? Ava answered politely but laconically. He was not there to promote himself. I was about to survive. And as the wine trickled down the glasses, the facade began to crack. It was Evelyn who opened the first crack. In a seemingly harmless comment, he said, "It's amazing how you achieved all this, even though I was so tough when I was young." Ava slowly put down the cutlery. The mother's tone was not complimentary. It was corrosive, disguised as admiration, an attack with velvet gloves. Nathan tried to intervene, changing the subject, but Ava didn't answer. He kept his gaze fixed on the plate, feeling the blood boiling in his veins. It was just beginning. Lara, perhaps trying to soften the situation, or stir it up more, blurted out, "I think deep down, all this success was just a way to get away from us, right?" He laughed softly, as if it were a joke. But it wasn't. It was a trial, and it was enough for Ava to get up. "Do you really think it was easy? That I woke up one day and decided to erase you from my life on a whim?" The table fell silent. The sound of Jacob's fork falling to the ground was the only sound that could be heard for seconds. Ava began to speak. Not to shout, to speak. But his words came sharp, clean, accurate. He said he did not run away from his family. He ran away from pain, judgment, emotional abandonment. He said that he built every brick of that life without a single congratulations coming from home. That while crying in the bathroom at the age of 14, hearing her mother say that she was cold and arrogant, she promised that she would never let herself be hurt like that again. And he did. Alone. Evelyn tried to interrupt. Ava raised her hand and said, "Now I'm the one who speaks." Richard's silence was finally broken. He muttered, "You've always exaggerated. It's never been this bad." Ava laughed. But it wasn't a light laugh. It was a laugh of incredulity. "It's never been so bad for you, Dad. You had the armchair, the newspaper, and the silence. I had judgment, contempt, and loneliness." The old man lowered his eyes. For the first time, it looked small, human. The children began to get restless. Emily, noticing the mood, quietly asked if anyone was angry. Ava knelt down next to her, stroked her hair, and said, "No, honey, we're just cleaning up what's been dirty for a long time." And this sentence, it was the turning point. Lara stood up, began to cry. He said that he always felt inferior, that he envied Ava's courage, but he also blamed her for leaving without looking back. Nathan asked for calm, asked everyone to breathe. Evelyn began to cry silently, her face covered by her hands. And Ava, in a firm voice, said, "You didn't come here for me. They came because they had nowhere else to run. But now that they're here, they're going to have to listen." And before anyone could answer, she added, "If you can't deal with the woman I've become, maybe you'd better go home. Oh, I forgot, you don't have one anymore, right?" The sentence cut like a knife. Cruel, yes, but true. And at that moment, everyone saw that Ava was no longer the silent daughter. She was the woman who chose her words as one who chooses weapons. And she was ready to use them if necessary. But what no one expected was that someone outside the family would soon emerge with a revelation that would change everything. a missing piece of the past that had been hidden, and now it was about to explode at the center of that silent war. The clock was almost 10 p.m. when the third bell of the day broke what was left of the night. The family was already scattered around the house, digesting not only the supper but also the wounds reopened at dinner. Ava, emotionally exhausted, thought about going upstairs and letting each one find their own destiny until she heard the familiar voice of the doorman say, "Mrs. Thompson, there's a gentleman named Tom Sanders at the door. He said he is his lawyer." Ava's heart jumped. Tone. On Christmas Eve. He would never appear without a serious reason. Something was wrong, or about to be put in the right place. She opened the door. Tom was there, as always, jacket lined up, serious face, leather briefcase in hand. But there was something else in his gaze, a mixture of relief and urgency. He entered bluntly. "I'm sorry to come at this time, Ava, but I needed to deliver this personally. I didn't trust the post office." From the suitcase, he took out a brown envelope, sealed with wax. In the corner, in cursive handwriting, was written, "To Ava, only when the time is right." The lyrics were familiar. Ava felt her eyes water before she even opened. It was from his grandmother, from the only person in his childhood who had given him love without demand. Everyone present gathered in the room as soon as they saw Tom enter. Evelyn turned pale. Richard swallowed. Laura crossed her arms. Nathan looked between the brothers, confused. Ava, sitting on the couch with the envelope in her hands, took a few seconds before breaking it. Inside, a legal document, dated 7 years ago. In short, a testament. Her grandmother had left Ava full possession of the family's historic property, an old farm in North Carolina, now valued at millions. But there was more, a letter. In it, the grandmother said that she feared that Ava's parents would try to hide this right from her, out of envy, pride, control. Ava read it aloud. Each sentence of the grandmother was like an affectionate hand in her soul, and a sharp blade on her parents' shoulders. The letter read, "You deserve to know that you are part of this family's heritage, even when they tried to make you believe otherwise. If you're reading this, it's because the moment of truth has come." Evelyn collapsed on the couch. We thought it would be best not to tell you. You were so far away, and so cold." Richard tried to interrupt, but Ava raised her voice. "You stole what was mine, not for money, but for revenge." The atmosphere in the room became unbreathable. Tom, with his legal neutrality, explained that, legally, Ava was entitled to everything from the beginning. But as the document was retained and not registered at the right time, there could be consequences. Ava didn't want to know about the legal implications. He wanted to know about morals. "You came here because you lost your house, because you are bankrupt, because you have nowhere else to drop dead. But they hid from me the one thing my grandmother wanted me to have. And now they appear with the face of saints at my door, as if the past had been a misunderstanding." Evelyn cried silently. Richard lowered his head. Laura tried to justify it. "Mom thought you wouldn't value it, that he was going to sell. I wanted to preserve the family history." Ava stood up. "Don't come to me with that speech. You didn't want to preserve anything. You wanted control. You didn't want me to have something that didn't pass through your hands." The words came out with a firmness that silenced every room of the house. Ava was standing, letter in hand, as if it were a symbol of truth that had been buried for years. The children, luckily, were already sleeping upstairs. But the whole house now seemed awake, awakened by the revelation that changed everything. Tom's presence there was the final seal. There was no more room for disguises. There was no longer any doubt. The Christmas reunion, previously disguised as an attempt at reconciliation, now showed itself for what it really was, a desperate maneuver by those who did not expect to be confronted with the truth. And it was there, in that room lit by Christmas lights and decades of heartache, that Ava understood. The time for being passive was over. And the time to take a stand, once and for all, had finally arrived. Ava stood in the center of the room as if she had finally understood her role in that story. She was no longer the renegade daughter, nor the black sheep, nor the cold and distant adult that everyone had always projected. She was the woman who survived, built, felt, and learned. And now he was there, not to forgive without explanation, nor to take revenge, but to put things in their proper place. With the document still in hand, he took a deep breath, looked at each of those present, and said, slowly, "This is the last time someone tries to use me and thinks they will get away with it." The impact of the words made Evelyn crumble. For the first time, she did not try to justify herself. He just cried. He cried with his face buried in his hands, as if he finally saw what he had done, or what he had not done for so long. Ava didn't move. He did not run to console. The woman inside her knew that cry was not for her. It was a reflection of wounded pride, accumulated guilt, the weight of years of denial. Evelyn babbled disjointed sentences, trying through tears to confess. "I didn't know how to love you. You were too strong, too independent. And that scared me." Ava felt the blow, but she also felt compassion. Because, strange as it was perhaps the most honest thing his mother had ever said. And it was not a request for forgiveness. It was a recognition, something that only those who have lived through deep pain can offer. But even so, it was not enough. Richard, the father, who had remained silent until then, cleared his throat. His gaze was heavy, damp, tired, and then he spoke, for the first time with truth. "I let it all happen. I saw your mother treating you like a problem, and instead of intervening, I chose silence. Because it was easier. Because I was also raised that way. But I saw your pain. I just never had the courage to do it differently." The whole room stood still. Ava held her breath. That man, who for years had been just a shadow in her life, now revealed himself to be human. Flawed, yes, but real. She did not respond immediately. He felt like a dam about to break. But he held on. He remained standing. Lara, her eyes full of tears, came over and tried to touch Ava's hand. "I felt envious. You left and I stayed. And as much as I knew you were right to leave, I felt abandoned. So I judged you. I spoke badly of you. I repeated what Mom said. And today, I regret it." Ava looked into her sister's eyes. There was guilt there, but there was also truth. And for the first time, Lara's words seemed to come from a place without masks. Nathan kept quieter. The most conciliatory of the brothers only nodded. "I knew about the will. I thought what they did was wrong. But I didn't say anything. My cowardice. Forgive me." Ava felt her eyes teary. But he didn't cry. Because at that moment, she was no longer moved by emotion. She was driven by something greater. Lucidity. "I don't know what to do with all this," she said. "But I know what I won't accept anymore. No more manipulation. No more silence. Enough of putting me as the villain of the story just because I had the courage to go off script." Ava's voice echoed clearly. She was firm without being aggressive. She was mature. It was the sound of a woman who had passed through the fire and emerged on the other side in one piece. And at that moment, each of those present felt the change. Ava was no longer at the mercy of the old dynamics. She now led the narrative. And even without knowing what the end of that night would be, she knew for sure she would never again allow anyone to take control of her story. But there was still one chapter missing, the most difficult of all, deciding who would stay, who would leave, and what would be the next step after the naked truth. The next day dawned gray, as if the sky knew that something was being enclosed inside that house. Ava's mansion, still decorated for a Christmas that would never go as planned, was now filled with a sense of waiting. Each member of the family woke up not knowing if there was still room there. And for the first time, who would define the next steps would not be Evelyn, nor Richard, nor any old dynamic. It was Ava who would lead the new order. And everyone knew it. In the kitchen, she prepared coffee for herself. He didn't. That wasn't rudeness. It was a limit. She sat alone at the table, reflecting. The document in his bag, the words of the night before still vibrating in his ears, the haggard faces of someone who, perhaps for the first time, was facing the consequences of years of denial. She knew that she could not, and did not want to, erase everything that had been said. But I also knew that a new choice had to be made. Not out of obligation, but out of conscience. He called everyone into the room. He asked them to sit down, and standing before them, he spoke calmly. I have heard each one of you, and I'm grateful that some truths have finally come to light. But that doesn't erase what they did, or everything they hid from me. I'm not going to pretend that tonight didn't mark me, because it did. But now, it's my turn to decide how we move forward from here. The family was silent, eyes wide, breath bent. You, mother, she looked directly at Evelyn, don't know how to love. At least, not in the way I needed to. And you may never know. But now, I know how to protect myself from that. If I want to continue in my life, it will be on my terms. And the first one is, never diminish myself to feel in control. Evelyn tried to answer, but Ava raised her hand. I'm not done. She turned to Richard. Dad, you did nothing. And that has always been his biggest mistake. Those who remain silent in the face of the pain of the other choose the side of the aggressor. But today you spoke. Too late, perhaps. But he did. And for that, I'm going to listen. But that doesn't absolve you. And it doesn't give you the right to think that we're close now. For Nathan, it was more lenient. You tried. He was the only one who tried to maintain sincere contact. Even without the courage to take a stand, he never attacked me. That counts. You are welcome here, but only if you understand that I'm not here to be your emotional crutch. Only his sister, and nothing more. Lara was already crying even before she was called. Ava approached her and said, You've always competed with me for something I never wanted. Mom's attention, the role of the good girl. But do you know what hurt me the most? That's when you turned your back on me knowing how hurt I was. Nevertheless, if you want to try again, really, I'm all for it. But an attempt with truth. No manipulation. No theater. And then, teary-eyed, Ava walked away and finished. I'm not kicking anyone out today. But you are the ones who will decide if you have room in this new version of my life. Because the Ava who accepted everything in silence stayed behind. And this new Ava, she doesn't accept more halves. The silence that followed was more respectful than tense. Evelyn just nodded, without further words. Richard stood up, walked to the door and said, You deserve peace, and I hope you find it, even if that doesn't include us. Nathan hugged Ava lightly. Lara promised to try. And that same day, after lunch, Evelyn and Richard decided to leave. No fights, no tears, only with the weight of those who understood, finally, what they lost. Nathan decided to stay another day, to help the children adapt. Lara too. But now, not as guests, like people trying to deserve a place. Ava, in turn, went up to the bedroom and, in front of the mirror, took a deep breath. For the first time, she felt that she was not broken, she was whole. Because true freedom is not to break with the family. It is to decide, with clarity and courage, who deserves to remain. And it was in this state of mind, in this silent restart, that Ava understood. The peace she sought was never in the absence of conflict, but in the presence of firm boundaries and true self-love. The next morning arrived serene, as if the universe, in a symbolic gesture, wanted to reward Ava for the storm of the previous night. The snow had stopped. The sky was a shy blue, and a light breeze blew through the half-open windows of the mansion. Ava descended the stairs in her bathrobe, with slow steps, as if still savoring the silence after the hurricane. The house was partially empty. Evelyn and Richard were gone. No letters, no promises. Only with the weight of a silent farewell. Nathan read stories to Emily in the library. Laura prepared awkward pancakes in the kitchen with Jacob. And Ava, finally, breathed. When the doorbell rang, the sound no longer caused tension. She opened the door almost smiling. Benjamin was there, with 2 cups of coffee on a cardboard stand and a calm look. It brought you what you needed before you even realized you needed it. She let out a short laugh. Telepathy or experience? Maybe both, he replied, entering with the lightness of someone who was already part of the landscape of that new phase. They sat down in the inner garden, where the snow was beginning to melt and the bare branches gave a glimpse of the clear sky. Benjamin waited for Ava to speak, and she spoke, not about the facts, but about the feelings. I always thought that if I moved away from my family, I would be freeing myself. But only now do I realize that I isolated myself without resolving it. And when they came back, all my unresolved conflicts have also returned. Benjamin nodded with a slight shake of his head. You didn't isolate only them. She isolated herself. And now he is finally finding himself again. Ava looked at her coffee cup as if searching for words on the dark background. Forgive. It's a lot harder than I thought. Benjamin crossed his legs and said sweetly, because to forgive is not to forget. It's remembering, without pain. And that takes time. She smiled, with that small smile of someone who is beginning to understand, but still doesn't know how to explain. The conversation continued unhurriedly. They talked about the will, about the grandmother's letter, about the feeling of finally being seen, even if by someone who has already left. Ava cried briefly, without embarrassment. Benjamin did not try to console. He just stayed there, present. And at the end of the conversation, she said a phrase that even she didn't expect to say, I think I'm ready to forgive myself too. Benjamin looked at her deeply. This is the most beautiful part of all. Because when we forgive ourselves, we stop fighting with the mirror. And he begins to rebuild, without fear of what was left behind. Ava leaned her head against his shoulder for a moment. It was a simple gesture, but full of meaning. At that moment, she was not the businesswoman, nor the daughter, nor the strong woman. It was just Ava, human, hooray, ready to start over. On the way back inside, he passed by the children playing and smiled lightly. He saw Laura wiping the counter with a cloth, and for the first time, he felt that perhaps there was hope there. Not to go back to what they were, but to build something new, real, possible, respectful. Because family, she now knew, was not just a blood tie. He was the one who stayed when everything collapsed. Who shows up with coffee, not with charges. Who listens, even without understanding everything. And with a lighter heart and clearer mind, Ava realized that her Christmas had been, after all, the truest of all. Because this time, she chose herself, and she chose it boldly. If Ava could leave a message for those who watch her story, she wouldn't start with great advice. It would begin with silence. Because it is in silence that pain often hides. It is in silence that the wounded child lives. It is in silence that the woman grows, swallowing words, accepting less, disguising sorrows. But she learned that there is a kind of silence that is not shelter. It is prison. And it was exactly the one she chose to break, that night when her family knocked on the door without warning, and the entire past invaded her living room with suitcases and secrets. Ava understood that it is not enough to conquer the world if you do not heal the wounds it left in you. That being strong is not about building walls. It is knowing when to lower them and consciously choosing who deserves to cross them. She learned that there is no greater strength than to look into the eyes of those who hurt you and say, "I am no longer the one who kept silent." That to forgive is to free oneself. But keep your distance. It is also love. Love for yourself. Love for the peace that was built with so much effort. She understood that family can be a cradle, but it can also be a choice. And that sometimes, those who understand you the most do not share your blood, but your soul. That relationships are not sustained by obligation, but by reciprocity. That vulnerability is not weakness, it is an open door to transformation. Christmas that year did not have a perfect soundtrack, nor a margarine commercial. There were confrontations, tears, truths choked for a decade. But she also had reconciliation, not with others, but with herself. It was the first Christmas Ava felt whole, even with a few cracks. And perhaps this is what defines maturity. Not the end of pain, but the choice to no longer let it dictate its route. The door Ava opened that night wasn't just wood and glass. It was an internal door, one that she had kept locked up for years, afraid of what she would find on the other side. And when he decided to turn the handle, he saw that what was there. It was herself. Ready, steadfast, imperfect, yes, but finally free. So, if you're watching this right now and feel like you carry old pain, unresolved relationships, imposed silences, maybe that's your sign. Your Christmas. It's time to open a door. Not for others, but for you. Because when you choose yourself, the world around you also begins to change. And remember, there is no greater gift than the courage to be who you are, even if it means disappointing the expectations of those who have never really seen you. Merry Christmas, with truth, with love, and with you at the center of the story itself.